Welcome to the All Recovery Talk podcast, where we talk all things recovery and substance use related. We're your hosts. I'm Kevin.
And I'm Lenny. This podcast was made for people in recovery, people with substance use disorder, allies of recovery, and everything in between.
Both Lenny and I are in recovery and work as peer support specialists at the only nationally recognized recovery community organization in North Dakota. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another episode of All Recovery Talk. On today's episode, like I said last week, it's a surprise. Well, mainly because I couldn't figure out what topic I wanted to speak about. But I think we're going to follow suit with this little mini series, you could call it. And we're going to go right along with, now that we've identified that we're addicts, what to do next. What's the next steps? We're joined by a special guest today. Lenny is on vacation. So we're joined by our executive director today, Jennifer. We are also joined by my son, who is, you might hear in the background every once in a while. So, today's episode, treatment. How to go about it. What treatment do you go to? Short-term, long-term, private, state. Figuring and navigating this unknown journey now that we've discovered that we are addicts. Welcome, Jennifer.
Hello.
How are you today?
Great.
Just great?
I am just great.
Awesome. That's great.
Even better looking at a cute kid.
Yeah. Oh, I failed to mention also our executive director is also my wife, so kind of works out.
It does.
So, treatment. What type, length, and where to go? Got any thoughts?
Well, I think we should probably start with what really is treatment and what are the types, right? Because there's so many different types all across the country. And North Dakota has certain types, but when you go across the country, there's so many different options. So maybe you can talk about your...
Well, before we start that, why don't we give the audience a little bit of background about yourself so they can get to know you a little better since you weren't in our introductions.
So I'm Jennifer. I am a person living in long-term recovery. I was born and raised in Minot, North Dakota here, but I went to New York University in New York City. So moved when I was almost 19. And then later on went to treatment in Tennessee, stuck around there for a while, and moved back here. And have been in recovery since moving back here. I guess that's a pretty good short version, if that's good.
That sounds about right. That sounds, without going into too much detail, that sounds good. You got anything to say, little man? Yeah? That's a good story? Is that good enough? Yeah? Yeah, good enough. So, treatment. How to go about navigating that unknown realm. So here in North Dakota, there are 28-day, as we like to call them, short-term treatment facilities. I know of, I believe, one long-term treatment facility, and that is North Dakota Teen Challenge. I believe is the longest term treatment facility that we have here in North Dakota. But for the most part, most of our treatment facilities here in North Dakota are short-term, 28-day, or a little more than that.
Hey, Kevin, do you want to talk about what treatment is, like the definition of it?
Well, treatment is a facility that teaches you a new way of life. In my eyes, that's what treatment is a facility that is structured, is a safe place to go where hopefully you don't have to worry about people trying to offer you drugs, which may not always be the case, depending on what facility you go to. Um,
So what we refer to as treatment is what some people refer to as rehab, or many other different names, I'm sure.
mhm.
But basically, where you go to get a different view on life. It's maybe you could compare it to like going to the hospital for a disease. It's like the place you go to get professional help for substance use. Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, that would be the case. Is it's where you go to get professional help from people who know better than you do.
I just thought we should define it so that everybody listening and both of us are on the same page.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for that. Yeah.
Get closer,
Why?
because I can hear you getting softer when you get further away.
But it's not getting softer here.
Okay. Your voice sounds better when you're closer.
Would you like me to talk like this, ma'am? Would you like me to just hold it in my mouth? Jesus.
Got some ASMR stuff going on there.
Yeah. Okay, so anywho, back to what we were discussing. Now that I am louder than shit. Okay. There. Now I got my levels about right. So, 28-day facilities here in North Dakota. So there are state facilities as well as there are private facilities. Private facilities, there are some private facilities here that have housing. There are also private facilities that do not have housing, and all they do is intensive outpatient. So in the inpatient realm, there that was for me where I was at, was in an inpatient realm. Um, it allowed me to focus on me and not have to worry about the outside world. Not having to be in the environment that I thrived in. While I was in an unknown environment. Um, so treatment is different. It's scary at first, because it's unknown. You don't know what's going to happen. But the one thing that I've learned, as a facilitator in treatment, as well as an individual that was in treatment, is that you get what you put in when you go to treatment. If I'm there to just be there, I might not get much out of it. But if I'm there to change and I put in the work, treatment is an amazing thing. So short-term treatments, generally involve the 28 days, like I said, and then hopefully, if possible, getting into sober living. Just another pathway, on that journey. Unlike long-term treatment, where long-term treatment facilities are set up that you are in services for anywhere between 28 days to 3 months for inpatient treatment, and then for another 3 months you would transition to sober living, and then you would end up in transitional living before you leave, for a total of 9 months. Which statistically has shown that a long-term treatment facility has better odds of the individual being successful in recovery. So I have a little bit of short-term treatment experience. Jennifer, I hear you have some long-term treatment experience.
Well, yes and no. You bring up statistics and what in those statistics long term really means, and that's something that I can't really speak on. But I can talk about my experience with getting into treatment and what treatment was like and how it worked for me. Um, so, so I a little bit of background on me and my family. My dad worked for the railroad, and if anyone doesn't know, the railroad has a union, and that union comes with some pretty decent insurance and employee assistance programs and all sorts of fun stuff like that. So when my parents were concerned, we'll say, concerned about me, they reached out to the employee assistance program and they found the options for me for residential treatment. And I looked into a couple of different treatment centers. And I guess, how long do you want me? How much do you want me to share?
Share.
I had a couple of different options across the country. Like I said earlier, I was in New York City at the time, and no treatment there was one that my insurance paid for. And so, being that I had pretty open options, I first started with trying to get into a treatment center in Minnesota. I called them. I had a pretty long interview over the phone, but then I never followed up. But I then, when I was actually ready to get help, I called this treatment center, Cornerstone of Recovery in Louisville, Tennessee, and talked to them really just briefly and got into treatment, I think within 2 days. I flew there. They picked me up from the airport, and got in. It was like midnight when I got there, but this treatment facility had detox. It had the actual inpatient treatment, sober living. Everything was included with treatment. So I get there and I do all of the assessments and all the fun stuff, because thankfully for me, I didn't really have to detox because of the substances that I was using. So I just started treatment. It was 8 a.m. to, by the time we were fully done, about 10 p.m. And it was a really terrifying experience, at first, at least. I had no idea what was going on. I hadn't slept in who knows how long. So when I first got there, got into my room for detox, and they had to do the medical checks, right? Like they do at the hospital. And I was so mad. I was so mad when they came and woke me up at 5 a.m. to take my blood pressure. And then somehow they let me sleep through breakfast. But anyway, I digress. It was scary. And I had to learn all of these rules, right? And because of the way that treatment is set up, and Kevin, you can tell us if it's the same in your experience, but it's not like everybody starts the same day. So there were people who were almost done with their stint in treatment, and I was just coming in. And there's for me a very, very brief kind of orientation. And then it's just, well, here you go. Start with the morning reflection and make it through the day. Maybe you'll figure it out.
I mean, that's the same thing with me, is, that it's not one group starts on this date. It's, there are people that have been there for X amount of time, so that you're there for a couple of days, and there's people leaving, then there's people coming in. It's, in essence, it's a revolving door type of situation.
Yeah, which is intimidating. But also, there's a reason for that. Mm-hmm. And we're not clinicians, so can't tell you exactly.
In essence, I feel that the reason that they do it like that is because in that way then it's you have the people that have been there, so that the people like you coming in scared, can see that, that the people that have been there for a while, you know, are changing, so that it's not just a group of scared individuals all starting at the same time, and to the point where then, half of them leave because, there's nobody there to reassure them that things will get better, that things don't continue to be so scary like when you first get there because you don't know what's going to happen, especially when you're coming off the streets and you're detoxing, you know there are people there that that are in the program that are like, hey man, I've been there. It gets better, it gets easier, this is what to expect, those types of things. Like one of the facilities that we had toured um, on our RCO tour across the United States that we did. There was a facility in Minnesota called Docs Recovery, um, that they had a post-treatment and pre-treatment house. And the pre-treatment house had, the individuals that were getting ready to go to treatment. And the post-treatment were those that came out. Well, they had people from post-treatment living in the pre-treatment house that would assist those just coming in off the streets that were waiting to go to treatment. Work through that anxiety and that um, that unknown, to be like, hey man, I was just like you. I was scared when I got here because I didn't know what was going to happen. This is what's going to happen. To allow them to feel that sense of relief, that hey, yeah, it's different, it's unknown, but there are people that are doing this. I'm not the only one that's walked through the doors and was like, oh man, I have no idea what's going on, and I'm just gonna leave. I don't know what's gonna happen, but I know what's gonna happen if I go out and use, and that's more comfortable. So it allows those individuals to feel a sense of safety by having that setup like that. And in essence, that's what, like the revolving door style treatment is, in essence, for. Most people don't realize that, but it's so that the people just coming in can be assured by those that have been there for a little while that, hey, this is what it's going to be like. This is what to expect. You know, I've been here for 3 weeks and I graduate next week. So, and I was you 3 weeks ago when I walked through the door. But I can say that my life is now different being here for those 3 weeks. So that they feel a lot more comfortable in this type of unknown setting.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Um, so is that how you felt when you got to treatment? Were you scared that since you didn't know what was going to happen? Or
I
did
mean,
somebody tell you what was going to happen?
no, I had no idea when I got to treatment what was going to happen. I was court ordered to treatment, so I really didn't care what was going to happen because I had to be there. It was something that you're going to treatment. It's either treatment or jail. So I took the latter and was like, I'm going to treatment then because jail sucks. um, and so I mean, at first it was different, having to talk about my feelings and emotions, and having to do a usage history, a life history. Those were some of the assignments that I had to do while I was in treatment. I had to make a chronological order of my usage over the years and how it progressed from being, I just smoke weed a couple of times to, oh, now I'm shooting up methamphetamines and year by year. And then I had to share it with the group. That was that was the craziest part. I had to share my usage history and my life history with the whole group. Um, but it was probably one of the most freeing experiences that I've had, and eye-opening experiences I had while I was in treatment, because it allowed me to see, just how fast I progressed through my disease. Um, and then hearing other people's progression, and realizing that I wasn't the only one that progressed like that. That I wasn't the only one that got to a certain point. Um, sharing my life history, and seeing the similarities in other people's backgrounds, that led them to um, using and things like that, and realizing that I wasn't the only one that had childhood trauma, things like that, really helped me feel comfortable in opening up through groups and things like that while I was in treatment.
So that identification and
Yep.
being with other people.
Yep. Yeah, knowing that, these people are just like me. May use different substances, but they're just like me.
Did you think that when you went in, that everybody would be
No.
just like you?
No, I didn't know. I had no expectations when I went, other than my expectation was that I go to treatment or else I go to jail. That was literally it. My expectation was, well, I can't use drugs. You know, that's one of the other expectations that was set on me, is that I can't use drugs while you're in treatment. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair expectation to have.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I guess for me it was a lot of what made me comfortable was hearing other people's stories there too. Because I thought because I was in a different state that nobody was gonna have the same story as me. I was gonna be so unique, just a unicorn. Um, but I wasn't, and I think that's the first time in my life that I really truly felt like I belonged, which is crazy to think that substance use treatment is the first place I felt like I belonged, but it is.
In essence, you end up finding your flock. you know, Being the black sheep, in the family. You never fit quite in. Even though they're family, you never feel like you're a part of. But you go to treatment, and you're just like, oh, it's my people. Oh, it's a room full of my people. Oh, they don't judge me for things that I say like my family does, or my friends do, because they're not addicts. Things like that. Um, treatment is can be. It is, I'm not going to say that it is, but it can be, that opening door to recovery. I know some people that never went to treatment that found recovery. I've through being, I was um, I ran group as a peer support specialist when I worked for one of the treatment facilities, and hearing some of the people share how many times they'd been to treatment. I think the most one that I'd ever heard was an individual that had been to treatment like 20 sometimes. Um, like they always say, yeah, I've been to treatment so many times that I could run this group, and it's just like, okay, well, here you go, and no one ever took me up on that offer. Um, but they had the knowledge, they just weren't applying it, So I think, you know, if like I was sharing earlier, you get what you put in, and if you put in, you know, that effort to change, treatment is that beginning pillar to changing, because it changes your people, places, and things. That environment, to where it's not a using environment anymore. It's a safe environment where people are trying to get better. You'll have your select few, that are court ordered there, that all they're doing is just finishing their court sentence to treatment. But then you have those people there that want change, that are putting in that work because they know what's on the outside. You know, it's a scary place on the outside. Um, for me, the last time I went to treatment, I was scared to leave treatment. I brought it up to my counselors. I think I had 3 or 4 days left or something like that. They had given me an exit date. And I walked up to them and I told them I was scared to leave. Can I get an extension? Um, you know, and my counselor put it best, you know, and I love the way that they put it because I understood it. You know, he told me, he's like, you know, Kevin, out of the 30 years that I've been doing this, you know, I found that the people that are excited to leave, you know, when we give them that exit date, are more often than not the people that we see come back because their disease gets them all excited to leave because then they can use. You know, it's the people like you that are hesitant to leave, that are scared to leave because you've recognized what's on the outside are the ones that are successful. You know, because you're hesitant. You know, you've now realized what's going to happen on the outside, what's out there on the outside. You know, and I understood that, you know, and I used that information that he told me when I got out and I came back home, you know, and I was extremely hesitant to the people that I talked to the things that I did, because I didn't want to go to prison because that's where I was headed if I relapsed and continued to use, is that I was going to prison and there was nothing I could do about it. Um, you know, so I took that information that he told me to heart, you know. So, you know, if you're going to treatment and you're trying to figure things out, you know, work on figuring things out, you know, allow yourself to become open-minded and willing to what those individuals in groups are trying to teach you, you know, because more often than not you'll find that the people that are working with you and doing groups are recovering addicts. You know, every once in a while you'll find that addiction counselor or that person that, you know, is a behavioral mod, BMod, skills integrator, things like that that don't have that background, but they are still there to help, you know, and recognizing that that's all they're there to do is just to help you.
And they clearly have a passion for it
Yeah.
because they're definitely not in it for the money.
Yeah, no, this is not a career gig where you just get rich and, you know, have a Lamborghini and a, you know, $1 million yacht being an LAC. Um, you know, it's the passion that they put behind it. You know, the reward that they get from seeing individuals come in broken and graduate, you know, successfully and graduate with hope. You know, it's an amazing thing. You know, I loved seeing that when I ran group, you know, watching individuals come in completely broken like when I got into treatment. And then they graduate successfully and they, you know, come up to me and be like, Kevin, thank you. You know, your group has allowed me to see that life could be different. You know, there's an individual that used to come to my group that every time I see her, she's like, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be clean today. And every time she says that, I'm like, no, you put in the work. You know, you have continued to put in the work. I just allowed you the chance to figure things out. You know, and that's what it is. You know, is the treatment facilitators are there, you know, to help you figure things out for yourself. You know, they may just nudge you in a, you know, a different direction if you're headed down that wrong direction, but that's what they're there for, you know, is to help you succeed. Um, you know, so getting mad at them for telling you the truth doesn't help. You know, just take that truth and use it, you know, because that's all they're there to do is help you. You know, just like in my day-to-day work, you know, all I'm here to do is help you. You know, sometimes people think I'm a condescending asshole or I'm a prick, you know, because I tell them the truth and, you know, I must be doing my job. You know, that's how I look at it is, you know, is because sometimes we don't want to hear the truth. So when we do, we call people names, you know, we act out, you know, because now we have to deal with that truth. Um, so I always enjoy being called names by people, you know, I take it with a grain of salt, you know, eh, because that's that means I'm doing my job and I'm doing it correctly. You know, to get people to think differently, to see things differently. Um, you got anything else on that take?
Uh, on being a condescending asshole?
No, not on that part. No, I mean, yeah, you probably do have. That's for a different episode, ma'am. You know, yeah, that's definitely a different episode for a different podcast.
As far as I guess on what take? On treatment? On being
Yeah,
told the truth?
Yeah, the
On
treatment take, like, what was your experience when it came to, counselors telling you things while you were in treatment? Did you have that view that they're just here to, to mess with me, or, they're here to help me? Because I've heard a lot of times, oh, they're just here because they don't, and they treat me the way they do because they don't like me. I'd hear that a lot. They don't like me, so that's why they treat me like this.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So I where I went to treatment, I mentioned that it was pretty much all day. So there were certain counselors that were I don't remember the exact times, but like morning, daytime counselors. And then there were afternoon, evening counselors. Um and it they were very different groups, right, of counselors. Um and in general, we all kind of got a lot closer to the evening counselors. Um I'm not really sure why. But
Because they were more laid back and they weren't waking you up early in the morning and telling you what to do.
could be. But so the person, and in case this podcast gets huge, I won't say exactly who it was. But there was a counselor who really truly like didn't seem to like me, right? And it wasn't because I didn't think that because she told me the truth and stuff like that. For me, she had what I perceived as favorites, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was not one of those favorites, and I was pretty fragile. I have this I didn't think much of myself, right? So when she wasn't treating me special, I decided that I didn't like her. And the first time that I went through treatment, it was just kind of like, right? I didn't dislike her, but also didn't like her. But then I ended up going through treatment a second time. And where I went to treatment, when you're a repeat customer or frequent flyer, you get put in a separate program, separate groups somewhat. And she was the one that was in charge of those groups. So I was pissed at the world and pissed at my roommate, who had also gone to treatment with me the first time. And we, at morning check-in, this counselor would ask, how we were doing. We had to check in mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And it was always, I'm pissed off, right? And she looked at me one day and she was like, if you don't knock that the fuck off, you're never going to get better. And and
She's such a bitch.
I did not like that one bit. She was right though.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't like it. And I thought at the time, I was like, well, she liked my roommate, so that's the problem. All the excuses in the world. But after my 28 days, on my very last day, after we had gone through a whole lot and I had to do a whole life story, and she pointed things out to me and all sorts of stuff for this special repeat customer program. She came up to me and she said, I know you're leaving, but I just want to make sure that you know not to outsmart the program. And I didn't really understand what she meant at the time. But that's probably the best thing that anyone could have ever told me. And it came from someone that I wasn't particularly fond of. And if I hadn't become open-minded through treatment and all of those things, I wouldn't have heard it. And I I now pass that little message along to a lot of people all the time. Um, and I'm really grateful for that. And now, being longer into recovery and doing the job that I do, I understand exactly why she approached my treatment the way that she did, right? Because if she had treated me like I was special, it wouldn't have worked. I would have just gamed the whole thing. So she knew what she was doing. I just didn't like it.
Showing how it goes.
Yeah.
Not her first rodeo.
Yeah.
Not her first you that she's seen in her time of, doing this. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also I went to a pretty fancy treatment program, so I wasn't the only entitled little bitch that had been through there either. So
I bet you weren't. You weren't the last. So, on that note, wow, ran pretty long today.
I think maybe we should continue the treatment thing again. Talk more about how to choose one.
Yeah, we could continue the treatment. That sounds like a plan. That is after, realizing that you are an addict. That is, probably one of the most crucial next steps is, how do I find treatment? Where do I go to treatment? What to do in treatment, what to expect in treatment.
Maybe what the alternatives to treatment are too.
Yeah, we could talk about alternatives like church, the other different programs, that there are many other programs that there are that you could try before treatment. So, with that being said, I guess we will continue this episode next week for episode 4, entitled Treatment Part 2, with your special guest, Jennifer, and hopefully not special guest, little Kevin, because he can be obnoxious and he can't quite answer questions yet. But this week's call to action is that if you have now identified that you are an addict, reach out for help. There are many different numbers that you can call. I believe last week I had mentioned recovery, 1-800-RECOVERY-TALK, 211 if you're in North Dakota, or nationally, I believe it is 988 that you can call, and they can get you into contact with somebody to talk to. And as always, use safely. Always make sure that if you are an opiate addict that you got a box of Narcan just in case you happen to overdose. Just be safe. If you live in a state that has needle exchange, practice safe usage through needle exchange. Things like that. And as always, you guys have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Also, if you have any questions or want to talk about treatment options and don't want to call one of those phone numbers, feel free to check out the show notes. We have a nonprofit website, and there's emails, phone numbers, all of that on there. We are always happy to help, or at least get you the resources for you to help yourself.